Good evening, my fellow Americans. I sit beneath the star-spangled banner of hope, freedom, and unity, a brilliant shining beacon above all others, to deliver this speech and honor every American worker in preparation of this 4th of July celebration. This symbol of profound greatness, proudly, prominently, towering over me, seems the only appropriate venue to share my deep, solemn reverence and pride for the rich history of American workers, the only workers capable of overthrowing the tyranny of a malicious king and raising a nation with the grit, wisdom, and rebellious souls that dared to dream of a world where possibilities are greater than their generational circumstances. In the beginning, the original American workers, native inhabitants, greeted the pilgrims with open arms and open hearts as the pilgrims faced the brutality of New England winters. Though the friendships and bonds dissipated, the American worker forged ahead. Early colonies gave rise to American innovation and entrepreneurship. Early American workers soon began constructing Conestogas that fanned the embers of wonder and hope and intrigue. That intrigue spanned the continent on the Oregon Trail, across steep mountains and great plains where buffalo roamed. Buffalo that would be replaced by the indomitable and proud buffalo soldier. Despite the efforts of the earliest and first American workers to maintain the land and natural wonders like the botanical hillsides of California, once again the ranks of the American worker grew as the rugged miners, the 49ers, rushed the California hillsides. You may be asking, what do all these long-past workers have in common? But it should be obvious. Like us, they were all Americans. Americans from every race, gender, religion, and belief. Some experienced racism the likes of which we can't imagine. Some poverty and exploitation unknown in our time. And others suffered torture and deaths that are beyond our comprehension. But they are our forefathers, and it is their unwavering dedication and unbreakable spirit that the foundations of our liberty and prosperity rest upon. American workers carved a legacy in the marble of this wild and rebellious spirit that continues to resonate across every acre of these United States. The first chapters in the story of our country could only have been written by those steadfast, resilient, and courageous workers who triumphed through the adversities. Despite hardship and injustice, those American workers' grit and perseverance have thrust the progress and wealth of the United States and molded a nation from the ideals of freedom, opportunity, and hope. As we gather over the next week with friends, family, and coworkers to celebrate the 4th of July, let us take a moment to remember with gratitude, pride, and to honor the countless unknown heroes whose sacrifices and labor have sown the seeds that germinated the legacy of our nation. Those heroes whose sacrifices and labor have sculpted America into the land of opportunity, liberty, hope, and riches that are not limited to money. The legacy of all early American workers blazed the trail of America where dreams can soar. We must never forget, always cherish, and uphold the sacred values of bygone American workers: freedom, unity, and resilience. They are the bedrock on which this glorious nation shines on this happiest of Independence Days. Even in our earliest hours of our nation, lovers gathered in unity. They weren't Republicans or Democrats. They weren't conservatives and liberals. They weren't one race versus another race. They were simply lovers of tea who gathered to form a party that would serve as a rallying cry for independence. Without that spirited love of tea, these states may never have been united. It wouldn't be long after that party that our early American workers drafted a Declaration of Independence from a tyrant. But not every story of our American worker forefathers was a success. Some were dramatic depravities which pitted American worker against American worker. Much like we, the people, are pitted against one another today, based on emotional manipulation. I am sure many of you have been attacked verbally, maybe physically, based on characteristics such as race, religion, and political affiliation, because it has always been a way for masters to divide and subjugate the masses. That emotional manipulation and gaslighting have kept American workers in chains since the first colonies were claimed. We only need to look toward the history of our eastern seaboard to hear tales of such subjugation. 13 women and 6 men were murdered after being accused of witchcraft in Massachusetts. When one man had the bravery to reject the witch hunt, he had stones placed upon him until he died. The fear of losing control is strong in our oppressors, And they have proven time and time again they will do the unthinkable to keep us subservient. A little further south, along the eastern seaboard, we will find house slaves, field slaves, and the eventual paper bag tests. American workers have endured and overcome trials and tribulations with a proud dignity. The Underground Railroad beckoned hope through the night to help countless escape slavery. It is a lesson whose theme is still a testament to the power, perseverance, and moral conviction of the American worker. Those brave, freedom-fighting American workers undermined injustices, and they led inspirational national introspection, causing the enshrining of rights to all the people, not just the wealthy and powerful. You see, we come from a long trail of overcoming the subjugation inflicted upon us by the powerful and wealthy, but we have always endeavored to recreate the rules, revamp the legal system, conjure movements that awaken us as one people, united to fight for what is right, what is our right, what is the right of every American worker. We must unite again, because once more subjugation has claimed a stranglehold on our nation, the like of which we haven't seen since a president refused to respect the Supreme Court. Subjugation, like the time our first American worker brothers and sisters were forced to endure the trail of tears, in a bona fide testament to the dedication they maintain as the caretakers of these vast lands, caretakers who, to this day, tirelessly toil to restore the mighty buffalo and other natural wonders that weave our heritage's tapestry. We owe them some of our deepest gratitude and respect for their steadfast commitment to their work, their mission, their ancestors, and their heirs. They were marched across a nation a few short years before it was unified by rail. The workers of the Transcontinental Railroad, nearly 20,000 Chinese immigrants supported by Irish immigrants, united the locomotive infrastructure of this nation from coast to coast for the first time while enduring grueling working conditions and harsh weather in a display of unparalleled dedication. All of these early American workers should be the heroes we all know and respect. They prepared the ground on which the following generations of American workers have built the United States we know today. From those first American workers and the earliest American tea lovers through the generations, American workers have cobbled a path of countless benefits. Some of the benefits they so tirelessly fought and sacrificed to secure included pensions for loyal employees, safe and affordable housing for families, utilities that reconnected families across vast distances and fostered communities, nutritious food free from spoilage, contamination, or disease that actually kept Americans healthy and hopeful. They didn't argue over which political party sponsored the bill because they knew. American workers have an unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They knew those rights don't exist in the shadow of slave wages and corporate subjugation, so they united. They united and experienced violent repercussions in California, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Missouri, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia, just to name a few places. They weren't socialists or communists. They were proud American workers demanding what was rightfully theirs, affirmed as unalienable in the Declaration of Independence. They are our guides, our teachers, our heroes, and we must unite to model their behavior, bravery, and steadfast demand for what is the right of the American worker. Those American workers built a nation where opportunity became truly accessible. Families dared to dream, and every person could achieve something more. We all know, every single one of us knows, most of the treasures claimed by those early generations have been pilfered by large corporations. No longer is the day when we can claim a pension, buy a safe house that is affordable, or consume water or food without fear of being poisoned by chemical contamination, intentional ingredient manipulation, or risk of disease. But there is hope, truthful, honest, faithful hope. Deep within us, we can feel the call to action. The call transcends political belief or affiliation, transcends sex, race, and preference. It is a call deep within the foundations of our existence. It is an undeniable resistance to and defiance of despair from the tyranny of our oppressors. Our early American workers have instilled in us the knowledge that through unity, perseverance, and unwavering faith, we will overcome and reclaim what is rightfully ours, all the benefits and virtues that make America truly exceptional. Today's employee faces home prices and apartment rents that are leaving more and more Americans living in their vehicles with their children. The exploitation of housing embitters conservatives and liberals alike. Housing isn't a partisan issue. It's an American worker issue, an issue of liberty, equality, and humanity. Where humanity and equality cease, so too do the inalienable rights of life and the pursuit of happiness. Don't be fooled. Many will try to gaslight you into believing housing is a privilege. It's not. It's the right of every American worker, a right to life and the pursuit of happiness. Utilities are skyrocketing, causing families to suffer what could only be described as psychological torture. Utilities are not the only thing that is increasingly beyond the reach of the modern American worker. Food prices are so unaffordable. Working families beg. They beg the government for help. But the government is broke and must send them away hungry. When these noble American workers are denied, they overwhelm the same food lines as those who are unable to work, unable to provide for themselves. America's working families are slowly being poisoned, tortured, and starved by our oppressors. It must end. The government has valiantly tried to help over the years, most notably with Wilson's New Deal. It is a deal that has been overgrown by the weeds of corruption, the blatant bloat of political expenditure, and a duopoly of power that has crippled congressional meaningfulness. With every dollar spent, Congress members seem to enrich themselves, while federal bureaucrats centralize self-interest and unelected power. Social services no longer serve the weak and vulnerable. They subsidize the greed of corporations that enslave American workers with low wages, lackluster benefits at exorbitant prices, and continuously growing demands for more of workers' time, without more worker compensation. These are not partisan issues. Food and utility costs the same no matter which party you vote into office. The federal debt turns away the same mouths of hungry liberal and hungry conservative school children. The federal debt has bloated and demands taxation of workers that crushes hope, crushes retirement, and crushes livelihood, while corporations pay nothing. They pay nothing, and they are enriched. But there is a plan, a hope that shines like a flame from a beacon of liberty. A truly American plan, created by the American people, not politicians and not corporations. A plan designed to return a true American dream to every American worker. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is a handcrafted piece of legislation that honors our proud and prosperous United States by uplifting its very heart, the American worker. It's nicknamed MQOL, which is based on its abbreviated form, MQOL, and is a nod to the notion that it has a built-in minimum cost of living adjustment, so American workers no longer need to rely on Congress to adjust the federal minimum wage. They no longer need to rely on Congress to adjust the federal minimum wage. We know Congress has been corrupted by corporations. We know it. That's true for liberals and conservatives, and we all know it. Every American knows Congress was purchased shortly after the passage of Citizens United. But if we unite as citizens, we can overcome the congressional obstacles and return a true American dream to every American worker. But the true awe of this proposed legislation is its three major parts: an evolutionary maturation of employee protections, national economic benefit, and enforcement mechanisms. It fundamentally changes the landscape for fully employed workers by ensuring they can afford safe housing, keep the lights and heat on without going broke, access and afford nutritious quality food, experience a healthcare renaissance, and taxes will become a line item that doesn't affect the American worker's bottom line. But that's not enough to truly honor the sacrifices of the American worker. So this bill is self-funded and pays down the federal debt. The funds it generates can only be used to enforce this bill and make principal payments of the outstanding federal debt. The self-funding ensures this law won't raise taxes. It will work to lower taxes. Self-funding means that federal employees who enforce this law must actually work for the American worker. If they stop enforcing the law, they will get fired because their jobs will no longer be funded. It forces the government to work for the people, not the corporations. But wait, there's more, a lot more. This law only applies to the biggest corporations, those that have 1,000 or more employees. This feature will help small businesses and stimulate entrepreneurship by rebuilding the middle class and the pride of working in America. The pride of working in America will be restored. When the middle class doesn't worry about the bare essentials, they explore our great nation and all the small businesses that make it so splendid. A revitalized middle class will lovingly pursue passions that lead to innovation, entrepreneurship, and a resounding resurrection of the United States as the leader of all nations, even if corporations try to find ways to rage against the Minimum Quality of Life Act. If any of the large corporations are found to have attempted to circumvent the Minimum Quality of Life Act and abuse American workers, they are facing major fines, and the executives can find themselves in jail. This law is serious business that demonstrates a serious respect and commitment to returning a true American dream to every American worker. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is our declaration of independence from corporate greed and wage slavery. We must unite, like so many workers that came before us. We must unite to demand Congress pass this historic legislation. If they don't, we must unite once more to vote out every greedy sitting member of Congress who has betrayed every American worker by denying them the inalienable rights which were declared so long ago. Don't let the gaslighting, lies, and manipulation fool you. This is not a partisan issue. This isn't socialism or communism. This is us continuing the proud legacy of those who tirelessly fought for the rights that have been stolen in the past few decades. We must unite in dignity, unite in defiance, and unite to peel back the power of corporations and put congressional candidates in seats that support the return of a true American dream to every American worker through the passage of the Minimum Quality of Life Act. I'm not quite old enough to remember the Pilgrims. I know I look like I am, but I can't remember the Pilgrims, the early settlers, and Western expansion. Nor was I able to remember any of the great nations that predated them in these lands. However, I did learn about their perseverance, dedication, and commitment not only to themselves, but to their communities, and something greater than themselves. The stories entrusted to me through Navajo stories, Cherokee video storytelling, and public school textbooks still remain deeply ingrained with a true respect for those who have responded to the call to teach. The appreciation for the great teachers of this nation, its youth, and its workers seem to have all but vanished. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Teachers are fearless, empathetic heroes. They brave shocking news stories of graphic violence, parents who have become increasingly hostile, school boards whose support seem to have been left in the early 2000s, and wages that only made sense in the early 1990s economy. Why has such a great swath of society found reason to abuse those who raise the greatest number of our progeny? While great institutions like Harvard were designed for the wealthy and elite, education has always been as commonplace in this country, in these lands, as housing itself, even if it wasn't always in a schoolhouse. We must honor that legacy to education and pay some of our most noble American workers, the American teachers, a wage that truly reflects their dedication, sacrifices, and services. We must ensure every educator knows they can claim every right, every single right of the American dream, including a safe place to rest their heads at the end of a tiring day. It is no surprise that in the days of colonizing the Colorado Rockies, there were places where it was common for critters and creatures to invite themselves into the home. Now, inhabitants of every state, including Colorado, are finding it more commonplace to see sidewalks, parking lots, and campgrounds filled with the refugees of corporate greed. The scenes of steel towering high above cities, as workers bounced high in the sky to create our most noble skylines, have been replaced by gentrification that rips renters from their resting places, places them in the street, and jails them for being exploited by slave wages. What were once single-family homes are now crowded with multi-family, multi-generational seekers of refuge from the onslaught of circumstance. No more are the days when all children could share a room with a single sibling. Now, entire families rent studios just to survive. But it doesn't have to be this way. There is a better way. And American workers have the right to a better life. It isn't a privilege. It is our declaration of independence from corporate manipulation, subjugation, and domination. Every American worker has an inalienable right to afford a safe, reliable home that is appropriately sized for the family. Parents shouldn't be forced to share a room with their children. Families shouldn't be forced to live in parking lots and campgrounds. The Minimum Quality of Life Act guarantees that families will be able to afford homes that accommodate their family size. It sets real standards based on the real costs where Americans work and live. It's built right into the law, and it isn't a partisan issue. Full-time workers being able to live in a house or apartment instead of a car or tent is not a partisan issue. It's an American right. We must unite now to free ourselves from the chains of corporate tyranny by demanding Congress pass the Minimum Quality of Life Act, because if they don't stand for American workers, they stand against American workers, and it will become necessary for one people, our people, the American people, to dissolve the bands which have connected them to our government by calling every American to vote them out in the 2026 congressional midterms. A right to a safe housing for employed Americans is not a giveaway, and it is not a freebie. It is a declared right in the founding papers of this nation. American workers have earned that right through their bravery and sacrifices. Their children attend schools that often present the risk of abuse, injury, and newsworthy acts of violence. Americans are tireless workers, often despite mental and physical illness. They deliver the services you need in person, on the phone, and through the internet. They greet and serve you in retail and dining establishments. They collect your trash and clean public spaces. We owe them our gratitude for keeping this nation stocked, cleaned, and operational. We are called to honor their rights to safe housing that doesn't create generational poverty for working in America. That brings me to another famous call in American history, the call to put a light bulb in every home. The news of transitioning from candles to candle watt electrified the country and sparked a race to lay lines in the proud American workers of the blooming electric industry. Workers from linemen to residential electricians organized the country and prepared it for the Industrial Revolution, aided by news of the first telephone call. That odd yet exhilarating news that a phone call had been made spoke life into a slew of American workers who used ingenuity and triumph to once again dial in the attention of every American village, town, and city, from seaboard to the telephonic technological revolution. These early American feats were rewarded with utilities we find so common today. Over the years, families migrated from gathering around a radio to the television to the internet for evening entertainment. Entertainment such as evening radio mysteries, television classics and movements like Big Valley and the Moon Landing, and internet viral sensations like the time Charlie bit my finger, and when we finally got the answer to, what does the fox say? Yet, today, despite the hard work and dedication of the tireless souls in the electric, telecommunications, and construction industries, the American workers are rewarded with longer hours and exhausting working conditions, while the corporations they serve see record profits. Customers usually have only one choice in provider and see ever-increasing prices that force them to endure flaming summer days and frigid winter nights in an effort to afford the lights being kept on. There are parents who are forced to look into the innocent, hopeful eyes of their children. They look in their eyes of their children and they tell them they need to put on an extra sweatshirt or take a cold shower so that they can survive the weather, because they cannot afford the utilities, because the utilities cost too much. All the while, the parents are pretending. They have to pretend their child has a real opportunity at a better life, because there is nothing more devastating than telling a child, your child, they will be forced into slavery so large corporations can increase the bonuses for executives. We must stop chanting about change, and we must create change. Create a better life for every American worker, so those parents won't be lying when they look into their eyes, the eyes of your children, and say everything is going to be okay. They deserve a better life. A life where families don't need to choose between the phone bill and raising the heat, so their child can stop quivering while clinging to them for warmth. A life where workers don't need to choose between taking a hot shower and using the stove to prepare dinner because residential gas is cooking their bank accounts. A life where every American worker, regardless of race, sex, background, origin, or other characteristic, can have a warm heart in the knowledge that this month will not be the month they receive unexpected utility price hikes which force their bank accounts into the negative. With so many negatives arising from corporate consolidation and control over utilities, it is hard to see a way through the dark. But there is a path. There is a light shining, faint as it may be. It burns to guide us to a better life for all American workers. Will we unite to feed the flame of hope, to demand Congress pass the Minimum Quality of Life Act, or will we let it go silently into that cold night and let socialists claim the hearts of American workers and control of what once was a proud, free nation? The act doesn't just provide utilities as a giveaway. Workers earn the right to afford water, sewer, trash, residential gas, internet, and phone services with their hard-earned wages. American workers have a right to utilities that do not eat away at their ability to save money for rainy days, when unexpected car maintenance or illness visits. This isn't about handouts or freebies. This is about American workers being paid fairly and using their sweat and struggle to afford the very things that are required to be a fully functional member of our society and this great nation. We are the United States of America, and united, we must demand Congress pass the Minimum Quality of Life Act to support the backbone of this glorious nation, or vote them out for having no backbone. No backbone. We must unite to ensure every politician who is elected to sit in Congress in 2026 supports American workers and American worker prosperity. We must unite to reclaim what is rightfully ours. We must unite to claim our liberty. We must unite to claim our happiness. We must unite to claim our prosperity. In school, I was taught the Pilgrims were struggling to hunt and grow crops in this great new world. Our native brothers and sisters guided them to the knowledge required to survive. And in the early days, there were friendships, and there were betrayals that caused rifts. Many friendships ended in those early years, but the need for food and skins for warmth did not. As early American workers progressively ventured further westward, they hunted the Great Plains until the mighty buffalo nearly vanished, replaced by cattle drives and the Great American Wrangler. The heroics of Western film stars who portrayed great American workers like Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp may be from a generation past, but the long days and fierce loyalty to the drive still linger. Only in recent years have bits of dust kicked into the air from the mighty buffalo, as our native brothers and sisters have been able to begin reviving the herds. Dust reminiscent of the Great Dust Bowl that claimed incomprehensible amounts of farmland that is still unworkable to this day. Yet, somehow, farmers had the grit and determination to feed a nation, and that determination has fed the world for decades. It is these great American workers we must thank for the real, nutritious food they provide despite the mounting economic slavery, oppression, and influence they, too, are often forced to endure. If they can't afford it, let them starve in the streets is not a motto of the Minimum Quality of Life Act, and the act knows no farmer who would refuse to feed a family in need. We need to learn from the American farmer and guarantee every family in the United States has a quality plate of food and a filled belly. American workers should not be forced to pay for super processed frozen cardboard to keep their children from streaming tears of shame, embarrassment, and hunger. Food deserts should not exist in a country as bountiful and prosperous as these United States, where fallow fields are a product of corporate greed and not a choice made by good working families who have toiled in seed and grain for generations. There should be no worker left in America who must choose between buying clothes for their family and food for their table. American workers from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, from Orlando to Anaheim, have a right to spend their wages on food that won't wreak havoc on their financial, physical, or mental health. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is the only known legislation to feed the appetite for affordable, quality food demanded by American workers. This act requires the Health and Human Services to formulate a list of the 50 most common, fully nutritious foods that are not highly processed as a baseline for the cost of quality food. The cost of those 50 foods will determine the minimum baseline for food costs to ensure every American worker not only has access to quality food, but they have the mental comfort of knowing there is enough variety to sustain them without succumbing to repetitive meal burnout. Remember, this is about what the least of us can buy. This is about workers having a right to the essentials. That means other food, luxury foods, may still be out of reach, but that is okay. This is a free country built on workers having the incentive to work to achieve more than the bare essentials. This is about ensuring workers are not in survival mode so they can find ways to climb into better financial situations and afford that new lawnmower, that new car, or that new boat. This is about every American worker being able to breathe and having the financial stability to invest and innovate without risking their home, health, or depending on government-backed food subsidies. Ensuring every working family is fed is not about food stamps or WIC or gimmicks or freebies. It is about ensuring the folks who are using WIC and food stamps are the ones who truly need it, and American workers are able to claim what they have earned. Quality meals at a reasonable price. WIC and nutritional assistance are invaluable programs and lifelines for those who truly need the extra help. But too many hardworking families are not getting paid the true value of their work, and it needs to end. It needs to end. We must unite and demand families be fed with the real dollars American work deserves. We must unite, not just as the working and non-working. We must unite as a nation of people of all political beliefs, all origins, all races, all sexes, all beliefs, a nation of all people, and demand Congress feed the starving workers of the United States of America and pass the Minimum Quality of Life Act. If Congress continues to starve American workers, we must starve their vote at the 2026 midterm ballot box and force all incumbents out of Congress for refusing to sustain the rights of the American worker. We must unite now. Unite in this moment. Unite in this movement. Unite to ensure our future is fed with the things we have earned, the things we deserve, the things we know to be a right. It has been a long time since America fought for its right to exist. In those early days, the battles were short, bloody, and quite often, the barbarity of the skirmishes were followed by the barbarity of healthcare. A leather bit in the mouth and a saw to the leg were the instruments of healthcare among those early American workers. And that was considered advanced at the time. Healthcare workers were held in high regard both in their education and their craft. Through the years, as healthcare matured, the first ambulance service in America appeared in Ohio in 1865. 3 years later, New York City advertised ambulance surgeon services with a 30-second response time. During World War II, signal boxes were used by battlefield soldiers to call for medical assistance. America has a great history of being a healer of American workers. That was, until the reins that guided the profiteering from illness and ailment were permanently hung in the barn of lost honorability by Congress, and a boom in healthcare profits and insurance premiums began drowning the American workforce. But current American workers drowning in fear of medical debt are finally being tossed a life preserver. American workers currently face healthcare insurance deductibles and premiums that exceed the actual cost of healthcare. We know this because the bill given to non-insured Americans for medical services is less than what insured Americans are required to pay after their insurance bill is paid. And that's for the same exact services. This exploitation of the need for life, a life that the Declaration of Independence calls inalienable, has been alienated. It has been alienated by every Congress that put profits above the health of the American worker. Every Congress that permits corporations the choice of who lives and who dies. It has been alienated in a way that forces workers, American workers, from choosing between paying for their children's cancer treatments and generational poverty, between crippling debt for their children's mental health services after surviving school violence, and paying their mortgage, between going broke by buying quality food or risking disease, illness, and cancer from contaminated foods. That's not the nation that American workers, the true heroes of this nation, the true heroes of America want. That's a dystopian hellscape that could only be contrived by profit-thirsty, health-exploiting slave masters. We must unite to demand change. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is the change that will heal a nation, this nation, these majestic and unwavering United States. But change cannot happen in isolation. We must unite. The act requires the largest corporations to pay their employees enough to afford both the premiums and deductibles of health insurance plans. The Minimum Quality of Life Act itself enumerates the plan coverages. A health insurance plan that requires the insurance provider to cover all routine optical, dental, and medical visits at 100%, so American workers have no fear of medical debt from their foundational preventative care needs. A health insurance plan that covers 100% of twice monthly outpatient and 6 emergency mental health visits, so American workers can defeat the anxiety, burnout, PTSD, and depression that have plagued us for so long. A health insurance plan that covers 100% of non-elective life-saving surgeries, such as cancer removal and life-saving pregnancy intervention. Insurance that covers routine and emergency dental and optical care at 100%. And there is so much more that it requires. But no American worker will be required to pay more than 20% of any medical bill ever when the Minimum Quality of Life Act is made into law. I cannot tell you how life-changing this will be for every American worker or not. These kinds of health benefits come once in a lifetime, maybe less. And even Congress themselves does not have access to the kinds of insurance that this act will require access to. This is about ensuring American workers can stay healthy for their families and the future prosperity and survival of our way of life. Quality healthcare is not about freeing painkillers and feeding addiction. It's about ensuring our future is protected from disease and illness. It's about ensuring no mother or father has to choose between medication that will keep them well enough to earn a living and the medication their child needs to stave off progressively worse health outcomes. It's about ensuring every American worker, regardless of profession, can enjoy the time they have, free from mental disease or chronic ailment. It's about uniting the American people to ensure every American worker has comfort in the knowledge that their life matters. Your life matters. We must unite to demand that Congress heal the American worker, or we need to vote them out for the sick choices they make to keep American workers ill, diseased, and dying needlessly for profit. In 2026, we must unite to heal ourselves, heal our communities, heal our states, heal these beloved United States. In 2026, we must heal the world, starting by healing Congress and voting out all the sick representatives who have ill intentions. Speaking of ill intentions, did you hear what happened in Boston? A small group, some would call an angry mob, destroyed huge amounts of commercial products in a protest of taxes. The whole event made the Boston Harbor change color and started a revolution that gave birth to a nation, this nation. We have a long history of rebelling against taxes, like that time when there was a whiskey rebellion. Through the course of time, taxes became acceptable for some reason, one reason or another. But in the early days, corporations paid their fair share. That was long ago, way back when the American worker was offered a new deal. Of course, in those days, taxes were used for the greater good in many cases. Not all cases, but many cases. Like the schoolhouses that were planted across the continent. Taxes became a social good and paved the way to permit cars to finally drive from coast to coast in a couple of weeks instead of months. Of course, like those early roads, taxes were small and manageable. Today, like the great freeways of this nation, taxes have continued to bloat and wane in efficiency. They are so inefficient that when trickle-down economics drove into politics, the good members of Congress forgot to trickle up the tax burdens of large corporations. Now, the American worker pays all of the taxes, all of them, while employers pay none. The American worker must choose between paying into a retirement account and paying rent. American workers must choose between paying taxes and saving for emergencies, which are always plaguing their minds. American workers are forced to pay Social Security taxes for Social Security they may never see, instead of being permitted to save for retirement. The whole thing exacerbates American worker dependence on Social Security and increases the need and cost of taxes they must pay in an endless cycle of increasing tax burdens. There is a way to stop the circular pain of taxation. The Minimum Quality of Life Act sets very strong correlations between the taxes levied upon American workers and the minimum pay that must receive for their efforts. Currently, American workers can see more than 40% of their gross wages stolen by the tax gremlin. But the Minimum Quality of Life Act stomps that gremlin into the ground. This act requires employers pay employees a wage where no more than 75% of their gross earnings go toward the combined cost of housing, utility, food, healthcare, and taxes. That means if the cost of any one of these items, or a combination of all of those items, is raised by $30, companies are required to raise the minimum payable wage by $40. This is why the Minimum Quality of Life Act has the nickname MQOL. It automatically adjusts the minimum permissible pay based on the real costs of living in the zip codes where you actually work or live. These are not national averages for the figures. The figures are taken from where you actually live and work. The American workers of Southern California have a very real and substantial difference in the cost of living from the American workers in Southern Alabama. And the MQOL recognizes that and codifies it into law. This act isn't about handouts or freebies. It's about ensuring American workers are able to have productive, meaningful lives where they actually live and work. This may sound like it will cause inflation, but it won't. Companies don't want to increase employee wages. That's why the Minimum Quality of Life Act was created. Employer greed. It is that employer greed that will keep costs for housing, utilities, healthcare, food, and taxes low. They want to maximize profits, and they can't do that if they are paying $40 raises every time they make a $30 increase in costs. This act is a 1-2 punch when it comes to inflation and economic prosperity. It puts more money, real dollars, into employees' pockets without inflating the prices of essentials. It stimulates the economy by rebuilding a vibrant, strong, prosperous middle class. A middle class that loves to dine out, shop, and be entertained by emerging small businesses. This act isn't just good for American workers. It's good for American entrepreneurs, American small businesses, and the American family. But we must unite to support this act and make it a law. A law that, despite gaslighting, will help all workers and lower the costs of living. The future is about ensuring that trickle-down economics trickles up the tax burden, so American workers no longer have to fear that taxes will eat away at their savings, retirements, or livelihoods. We are one people, one nation, and we must unite with one voice to demand that lawmakers pass the Minimum Quality of Life Act so we can correct the mistakes that have been trickled down by Congress for decades. We must unite our vote and wash away all incumbents who refuse to protect American workers from the mistakes of the past. We must unite to ensure the 2026 congressional midterms impose a vote out of office tax on all Congress members who refuse to end the betrayal of the American worker. I only wrote this law 2 months ago, and there is already substantial misinformation and gaslighting. Large corporations and politicians don't want you. They don't want you to know the truth about the Minimum Quality of Life Act because they know it will make you demand it become the law of the land. So I want to take a moment to directly address some of the most common gaslighting, myths, and flat-out lies that have been circulating about the Minimum Quality of Life Act. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is not socialism or communism. It is the last line of defense of capitalism against socialism. The Minimum Quality of Life Act sets a minimum cost for conducting business for employers who have 1,000 employees or more. It does not require profit sharing. Employers retain the right to set wages as long as the minimum they pay meets the requirements, and they, likewise, get to use their profits in any way they choose. They are also permitted to dismiss any employee from employment in accordance with current employment laws, as long as they aren't doing it purely to circumvent the requirements of the Minimum Quality of Life Act. My personal favorite issue brought up about the Minimum Quality of Life Act is that large employers, the ones who don't deal in healthcare, housing, utilities, or food, it is said that these employers will just increase the prices of their goods and services, instead of working to lower the costs of those 5 items. To that, I say, let them. Let them raise their prices. We live in a free society where business leaders live and die by their choices. If large companies raise their prices because those 5 items require a raise in wages, they will be pricing themselves out of the market. This act doesn't apply to small and medium-sized businesses, so any large company who raises their prices won't be able to compete with small and medium-sized businesses. Say what you will about large businesses. Most are pretty savvy when it comes to making profits. Most large businesses will understand the way to maximize profits is to drive down costs and continue to effectively compete with businesses of all sizes. The only way they can do that is by working together to drive down the costs of housing, healthcare, utilities, food, and taxes for all Americans. It may sound complex, but the financial and legal wizards at large organizations know this is simple math. Bring down costs or go out of business. There is a myth circulating that this act would hurt small businesses and stifle innovation. That is simply a lie. This act will help rebuild the middle class and give them some extra spending money. It will rebuild the middle class and give extra spending money. When people have a few extra dollars in their wallet, they spend more time at small businesses and spend more money at small businesses, whether it be while traveling, a staycation, or just a night out with friends and family at a local restaurant. Those extra dollars are often saved, too, which leads to an increase in inventive exploration, innovation, and entrepreneurship, because Americans don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. They are no longer in survival mode. That creates more small businesses. Farmers. You will probably hear that this act hurts you because it lowers the cost of food, but that is false. Many farmers sell most of their crops to a single buyer or have contracts that specify how they must run their farms. Under this act, the Minimum Quality of Life Act, employment is determined by substance over form. The Department of Labor will look into the control and influence that those companies have over your farming operations. If it is determined to meet the threshold, those companies will be required to pay you for the hours you spend fulfilling those contracts and requirements, in addition to your yield. Many of you know companies buy from you for pennies what they sell for dollars, while requiring unreasonable influence over how you manage your operations. If they want to be your boss, they will have to pay fair compensation for your time. You may be thinking I am only inflating the benefits and may think this act will inflate costs, but it will not. I cannot begin to impart on you the quality and depth of the benefit of the Minimum Quality of Life Act this evening. Likewise, this act won't inflate costs on the metrics identified: housing, food, utilities, healthcare, and taxes. When the cost of any of those services is raised by $30, every covered employee must increase wages by $40 for every employee receiving the minimum wage. All of the largest employers in the nation will work tirelessly to reduce the costs of housing, food, utilities, healthcare, and taxes so they can maximize their profits, and they will be permitted to be profitable, and boy will they profit. If the employer is not providing housing, food, utilities, or healthcare insurance, their prices do not affect the required minimum wage. So those fancy delicacies that we consider luxury items will still be luxury items. Taking care of the least paid workers does not mean higher paid workers will no longer have access to the higher quality perks they have worked to achieve. It does mean that the lowest paid workers will finally get an opportunity to work their way into positions of higher pay. Lowest paid workers can finally work their way up and see economic prosperity. It's about delivering what our forefathers wrote in the Declaration of Independence. Americans have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Big businesses know the math. They know the profit margins. And they know it is time to reduce prices and start competing with small businesses once more while paying fair wages to every American worker they employ. There are even claims that this act is extremely conservative or extremely liberal, when in fact, it has nearly the same number of talking points from both sides of the aisle. For the Republicans, the conservative talking points include self-funding and paying down the federal debt. Fully employed workers will no longer need government healthcare or food program assistance, which further reduces the federal budget. Jobs cannot be moved out of the country. Jobs can't be moved overseas. The act has very stiff penalties, both civil and criminal, for companies that break the law. This act stimulates the economy and small business growth, and this reaffirms the right of every employer to lower wages when the costs associated with the core metrics of this act are lowered. For the liberals, for the Democrats, the talking points include creating a real living wage that is actually enforceable and does not rely on Congress to update it. It's dynamic. It updates itself on the real costs American workers see. It ensures quality healthcare is affordable for every American. It begins to assist in alleviating poverty and homelessness. It frees up Medicaid and nutritional assistance funds by removing employed Americans' reliance on those programs, which increases the ability to help those who are truly in need. It trickles up taxes to ensure equality in taxation. It is an oasis for food deserts, and it provides equal minimum starting places for all American workers, so nobody is left behind. This act solves so many talking points for both sides of the aisle, they hate it. Neither side will be able to campaign on affordable housing, quality healthcare, the federal debt, utilities, taxes, or food. Those problems will be solved. They won't be able to complain about big businesses abusing American workers or small businesses. They won't be able to campaign on promises or complaints about inflation or the economy or losing jobs overseas. Neither side will know what to do with themselves. The Minimum Quality of Life Act doesn't just reform and heal the American workforce and small businesses, it reshapes the entire political discourse of these United States of America. As you watch me under this star-spangled banner of hope, perseverance, liberty, justice, the resounding strength of all Americans, both workers and those who find other paths, enlisted or civilian, I want to thank every American worker across every state for your steadfast commitment, your dedication, your unwavering endurance. I know there are times when you want to rage against ungodly housing prices, when you want to lash out against utility companies who increase prices without offering increased service or benefit, when you want the exploitation of food to fault, when you want the wage slavery that causes poor mental and physical health to end. I see you. I am proud of you. And I am here to say, I am on your side. Together, we can lash out. we can make change, and we can end the exploitation and wage slavery. If you are a member of Congress or a member of their staff, this is your notice. Stand with the workers of the United States and publicly support the Minimum Quality of Life Act and return a true American dream to every American worker by January 1st, 2026. Or prepare. Prepare, because your political party, your PACs, and your public image can't save your seat in Congress. The American workers are joining the movement. They are airing grievances, and they are preparing to vote you out. The Minimum Quality of Life Act is our declaration of independence from the tyranny of corporate control, influence, wage slavery, and economic exploitation. The time to act is now. God bless these United States, and good night.